there's one thing I know, there's one thing I know. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. Don't believe half of the things that they show. Don't believe half of the things that they show. If there's one thing I know, there's one thing I know. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. Only half of the story ever gets told. Only half of the story ever gets told. Stevie Wonder can see his bare lies that they're telling. Stories ain't adding up, the plot ain't gelling. It's obvious that they lied about 9/11. That was a controlled demolition, brethren. Same way King James edited the scriptures, the media editing, photoshopping pictures. A plane disappeared off the radar, magic. A lot of people lost their lives and loved ones, tragic. But no black box, no bodies of the passengers, no piece of the plane, something ain't adding up. Same old rhetoric, Islamic terrorists, unemployed, increasing crime level menaces. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. It's that only half of the story ever gets told. I can't believe half of the things that they show. A wise soul knows that there's nothing that he knows. If there's one thing I know, there's one thing I know. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. Don't believe half of the things that they show. Don't believe half of the things that they show. If there's one thing I know, there's one thing I know. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. Only half of the story ever gets told. Only half of the story ever gets told. Same week, Kendra Chapman, Sandra Bland. Every other day they kill another black man. Don't matter when they got the evidence on tape. Ku Klux, wicked cops still bust the case. Blacks dead, black and blue by the wicked boys in blue. They show it in the news like there's nothing we could do. I know, they're trying to start a civil war, and after that introduce their martial law. If there's one thing I know, it was all written. Don't know if they were planning or predicting. RFID and microchipping says it all in the Bible, we're God's children. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. Only half of the story ever gets told. Don't believe half of the things that they show. CIA put the cancer in Bob Marley's toe. If there's one thing I know, there's one thing I know. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. Don't believe half of the things that they show. Don't believe half of the things that they show. If there's one thing I know, there's one thing I know. One thing I know, there's one thing I know. Only half of the story ever gets told. Only half of the story ever gets told.
To the latest on Sandra Bland, the woman who was found dead in a Texas jail cell 3 days after being arrested during a traffic stop. Police have released new video from outside her cell around the time she died, as her family awaits the results of that private autopsy.
Back, a University of Cincinnati police officer has been charged with the murder and faces life in prison for killing an unarmed man during a traffic stop earlier this month. Now, the cop was arraigned earlier today. He pled not guilty. The incident has been heavily scrutinized. 2 other officers involved in the incident have also been placed on administrative leave.
Good evening. For the second time in as many weeks, a grand jury has found the evidence is just not there to charge a white police officer in connection with the death of a black civilian. This time, it's in the biggest city in the nation, packed with tourists for the holiday season. These cases are wildly different and half a nation apart. This one involves the video seen around the world by now, showing a man named Eric Garner being taken down by mostly plainclothes police officers while being placed under arrest. One of the officers employed a chokehold. Moments later, while on the ground after complaining he couldn't breathe, he was dead.